functioned as a temple during the time of Queen Cleopatra and the Greek pharaohs. So this could be the perfect place for Cleopatra's lost tomb.
For over 2,000 years, the world has hunted for one secret, the final resting place of Cleopatra. Legends painted it as cursed, hidden, or lost forever beneath stone and sea. But now, after endless dead ends, a discovery has surfaced that experts can no longer ignore.
Do you see water here? We will go in the other direction now.
What they uncovered goes far beyond gold or treasure. It raises questions about power, faith, and the way history has been written. Could this truly be the end of the search, or only the beginning of an even greater mystery? The last queen's final hours. The gates of Alexandria had fallen. Roman legions marched through streets that once sang with festivals and light. Inside the royal quarter, Cleopatra moved with purpose toward the mausoleum she had ordered long ago for a moment like this.
Cleopatra's precise heritage is a point of scholarly debate.
She was not preparing to surrender. She was preparing for the end. Servants scattered, doors sealed, dust hung in the air like ash. This was where she would decide her fate, not a Roman court. Moments earlier, Mark Antony had been carried to her, bleeding and broken after stabbing himself when a false report said she was dead. In the chaos, he asked for forgiveness and died in her arms. To Cleopatra, Antony was more than a lover. He was her last general, the shield at Egypt's edge, and the father who stood between her children and Rome. His death crushed the last line of defense and the last hope of a negotiated peace. The war that led here had begun years earlier. After Julius Caesar's assassination, Rome split. Octavian consolidated power in the west. Antony ruled the east and allied with Egypt's queen. Their gamble ended at the naval battle of Actium, where Octavian's forces broke them. They withdrew to Alexandria to rebuild, but Octavian pushed south, closing the trap. By the summer of 30 BCE, the city was finished. Cleopatra knew what capture meant. Octavian, the future Augustus, had paraded defeated rulers in chains. She would be marched through Rome as a trophy. Egypt's queen turned into a cautionary tale. She chose dignity over that theater. In the sealed mausoleum, with her attendants Iris and Charmion, she prepared to die on her own terms. The arguments concerning her death remain unending. The narrative paths provided by the ancient writers varied on the subject. One chose a venomous asp hidden in a basket of figs, another a vial of poison. Even a blade was admitted. The only constant was that of control. Roman soldiers broke into the chamber when it was too late. Cleopatra lay lifeless. Iris had dropped by her feet, and Charmion, barely standing, adjusted her queen's diadem before falling. That gesture said everything. Even post-mortem, the image of a pharaoh has to be right. Octavian was stunned. He wanted her to be alive for his triumph, but now all that was in front of him was a symbol he could not show. Later accounts say he ordered Cleopatra and Antony were buried together with honors. Whether it was respect or control, the result was the same. The most famous couple of the ancient world disappeared into a tomb no one could name. She did not disappear only in memory. Parts of Alexandria were severed by seismic activity, and then later a tsunami. Royal sections disappeared under the ocean. Records burned or flew apart. For 2,000 years, storytellers fought about snakes and daggers, and the matter that was most important remained unanswered. Where did they lay her? She has spent her time framing the identity of queen and goddess, politics and ritual. If she were buried according to that vision, it would not be easily recognizable, nor simple. Somewhere, hidden by intention, cataclysm, or both, her last choice waits. And so began the longest search in Egyptian history, a hunt across libraries, ruins, seabeds, and sand for a door that would not open until someone decided to look where almost no one else had. Centuries of searching in vain. For more than 2,000 years, The tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony has remained one of history's most haunting mysteries. Almost as soon as the Queen's death was recorded, speculation began. Chroniclers in the early Islamic period wrote of palaces buried beneath Alexandria, whispering that Cleopatra's resting place lay hidden there. They told of strange lights seen over ruins, of walls collapsing during secret digs, of chambers sealed by curses. Yet no one ever found proof. The mystery only deepened as centuries passed. By the Renaissance, Cleopatra was no longer just a ruler. She was a legend. Artists and poets reimagined her as a seductress, a sorceress, or a tragic heroine. Travelers poured into Egypt, more drawn by her myth than by archaeology. Some swore they had located entrances to her tomb in hillsides or under temples.
And when I was studying the shape of this chamber, because it's unique.
But most were deceived or deceiving. A few claimed the site was cursed, sealed by powers stronger than stone. Each story fueled obsession, but the burial itself stayed hidden. In the 19th and 20th centuries, when archaeology replaced legend with science, hope returned. Alexandria seemed the logical place. It was her capital, her family's seat of power. Divers and excavators turned to the ruins beneath its modern streets and harbor. After a massive earthquake and tsunami in 365 CE, entire sections of the royal quarter had sunk into the sea. If Cleopatra was buried in that district, her tomb could now be underwater. In the 1960s and 70s, the Egyptian diver Kamal Abu el-Sadat went to the underwater city. He found pillars, sphinxes, and statues that confirmed what ancient texts say about the royal palace. A funding crisis shut his work. Later, French archaeologist Franck Godiot returned to Alexandria's coast with more advanced tools. His team unearthed remnants of temples, palaces, and the great harbor itself. No tomb has been found, however. Other areas were also visited: Abu Sir, Abu Qir Bey, and Necropolis further inland. None of those produced answers. Excavation results collected coin fragments, pottery, and inscriptions. Not any revealed the burial of Egypt's last pharaoh. To most, it seemed done intentionally. Cleopatra may have opted for a sealed tomb, a sacred burial site destined never to be opened, not even by priests. If this is true, her strategy worked for 2 millennia. Though there was an element of physical difficulty, the whole experience was further compounded by politics and myth, the kind of ineffective politics and mythical stories present at the time. Rome was propagating its own tale, depicting Cleopatra to be dangerous, deceitful, and unworthy of any respect whatsoever, which was how the rest of Western history relegated her to that of a seductress rather than a strategist. The discovery of her tomb might have exposed some other truth, one which was intended to be erased by Rome. The want of evidence really suited constructions of the truth, even over several centuries. But still, there remained this fascination without an end. Adventurous generations of explorers lost fortunes and reputations on the perilous pursuit of this mystery. Others returned with curses containing the expected artifacts, but most went home empty-handed. Cleopatra's tomb did not yield to advancements in modern technology, although it made the impossible seem achievable. Even so, while the world searched in Alexandria and underwater ruins, the answer may have been waiting just for a temple most people neglected, just beyond the city's edge. And one woman, an outsider with no formal training in archaeology, was determined to look where no one else would. The woman who wouldn't stop when the search for Cleopatra's tomb seemed destined to remain unsolved. A surprising figure entered the story. Not a seasoned Egyptologist, but a criminal lawyer from the Dominican Republic. Dr. Kathleen Martinez had spent years studying Cleopatra as more than a queen or seductress. To her, Cleopatra was a strategist, a woman who shaped her image as Isis on Earth and carefully planned her death. Martinez became convinced that to find Cleopatra, she needed to think not like a historian, but like Cleopatra herself. Her theory broke from tradition. most experts focused on Alexandria, believing the queen's tomb must lie in the ruined royal quarter. Martinez disagreed. She reasoned that if Cleopatra wanted to avoid being paraded through Rome and denied Octavian his victory, she would not allow her body to remain in Alexandria, too visible, too vulnerable. Instead, Martinez turned her attention to Taposiris Magna, a temple complex 45 kilometers west of the city. The site was tied to the goddess Isis and, crucially, had little surviving documentation. That silence was a red flag, a gap in history that begged to be filled. With no formal archaeological background, Martinez faced skepticism from every direction. Colleagues dismissed her as a dreamer. Even her own family doubted her. But she was relentless. She gave up her legal career, moved to Egypt, and fought for excavation permits. At first, authorities allowed her only 2 months to prove herself. That window was nearly impossible. 4 weeks of documenting the site before she could even begin digging. But on the very last day, her team uncovered artifacts directly tied to Cleopatra's era. It was enough to keep going. Every passing year, Martinez financed and directed excavations in Taposiris Magna. She dug up coins with the face of Cleopatra, statues of Ptolemaic rulers, and religious paraphernalia linking to Isis and Osiris. Each find eradicated the doubt somewhat more, yet the mainstream academic world remained reserved. Many Egyptologists dismissed her discoveries, yet interesting ones, not conclusive. But Martinez kept chipping away. Further evidence, as she thought, brought her closer to the truth. Her doggedness made waves across continents. National Geographic was to follow her journey. Later, renowned oceanographer Robert Ballard, known for discovering the wreck of the Titanic, joined her team to map submerged structures associated with the temple. The partnership brought an extra layer of credibility and resources beyond what poverty would allow. But of course, the drive was still Martinez's obsession. Once, she even confided that chasing after Cleopatra's tomb had become more a mission in life than research. Conviction was the thing that set her apart. It was not a matter of reading some thesis for her. It was making Cleopatra whole again from the damage history had done to her dignity. Every artifact pulled from the earth only made her more certain this was the path she had to follow. Against doubt, danger, and all the red tape involved, she would not deviate from that course. And finally, after almost 2 decades of pursuing a dream, her colleagues found something that changes everything. A hitherto unseen underground tunnel hidden under Taposiris Magna, sculpted in the most delicate manner ever witnessed by archaeologists. It was the strongest evidence yet that Cleopatra's final secret could be very close. But what lay inside the tunnel would prove even more unsettling than anyone had imagined. The Tunnel of the Dead. Beneath the ruins of Taposiris Magna, Martinez and her team uncovered what would later be called a geometric miracle. More than 1,300 meters long and buried 13 meters below the surface, this hidden tunnel stunned engineers and archaeologists alike. Its precision rivaled famous ancient works, such as the Tunnel of Eupalinos in Greece. Yet, it had no signs of carrying water or serving as a drainage system. This was not infrastructure. It was something else entirely, possibly a sacred route leading to a royal burial site. The tunnel's walls were smoothly carved, its platforms carefully placed, and its direction pointed toward the Mediterranean Sea. Portions had collapsed, others were flooded, but what remained intact revealed a level of craftsmanship far beyond necessity. To many, it was proof of design with ritual or symbolic purpose. For Martinez, it confirmed her belief. Cleopatra's tomb was not in Alexandria, but hidden here, beneath the Temple of Isis, accessible only through this concealed passage. Exploration was perilous. Flooding filled sections of the tunnel, forcing Martinez's team to rely on sonar, scanning equipment, and even small robots to probe the areas they couldn't reach. Yet the more they studied, the clearer it became that the tunnel led somewhere significant. Martinez believed it was designed to keep the queen's burial away from looters, away from Rome, and hidden until a future generation could find it. Then came the discovery that would leave the team visibly shaken. A vault connected with the tunnel seemed sealed. When they got inside, however, they found not a peaceful resting place for a single queen, but a much darker spectacle. Numerous human skeletons, deliberately arranged. Some were kneeling, with arms folded. Others were curled up in a fetal position. Still others lay face down on the ground, limbs pulled tightly beneath their bodies. These were no ordinary burials. The unusual arrangements suggest ritual homicides, poison or trauma to the throat, maybe self-inflicted or forced upon them as part of the act. With the very grim context of the hieroglyphs on the walls, there were depictions of really a crowned woman by the name of Isis, standing beside a man whom we might safely assume would be carrying the crook and flail of Osiris. This has been understood by many to be Cleopatra and Mark Antony, in the guise of deification. It would indicate that all those who were here died for their queen to go through the metamorphosis from ruler to goddess. The chamber seems to be an area of ritual death, where Cleopatra was probably followed in death by members of her inner circle. Even more unsettling was the opposite wall where Cleopatra had been rendered as Isis. The surface was discolored, marred, and blackened by fire. The image of her was scratched and chipped on purpose. Not a natural degradation over time. This was desecration. Someone had entered this room after the deaths, vandalized the artwork, and sealed it again. Destroy her image. Whether it be early Christians denouncing pagan worship, Roman soldiers erasing her legacy, or later priests wanting to rewrite history. No bodily remains were handed over to the chamber, nor were any remains positively identified as Cleopatra or Antony. But these symbols, images, and ritualized deaths all pointed to her presence. And therein lay terrible questions. Is this really the site of the queen's tomb? Were the remains stolen? Or were they feared to be even more dangerously hidden? What Martinez's team found was not closure, but a riddle, a glimpse into a burial that could never have been simple. And it was enough to provoke silence, hesitation, and even fear from those who held the power to decide what the world was allowed to know. When discovery meets denial. The discovery at Taposiris Magna should have sparked headlines across the globe. A hidden tunnel, ritual deaths, and desecrated images tied to Cleopatra. This was the kind of find that rewrites textbooks. Yet instead of an official announcement, there was silence. No major press conference, no photographs released, only scattered leaks and whispers from insiders. It was as if something, or someone, had decided the world wasn't ready to know. Part of the hesitation came from religion. Cleopatra had deliberately merged herself with Isis, presenting her reign as divinely ordained. In the chamber beneath the temple, she and Antony were depicted not as mortals, but as gods. To confirm that evidence would mean validating a narrative of a queen who claimed divinity, who orchestrated ritual deaths, and whose followers may have died to seal her transformation. For some religious institutions, such revelations were considered dangerous, even blasphemous. Politics added another layer. Rome's version of Cleopatra, the deceitful temptress who brought down Antony, had dominated history for 2,000 years. To find her tomb in a sacred Isis temple, surrounded by ritual sacrifices, challenged that image. It painted her not as Rome's defeated enemy, but as a ruler who outmaneuvered them even in death, denying Octavian his ultimate trophy. A discovery like that could shift the balance of historical narratives, unsettling those invested in preserving the Roman version of events. Tourism and the preservation laws of Egypt come into play as Egypt is heavily dependent upon heritage tourism. Thus, officials need to be very diplomatic about what they say and when. Areas of this magnitude require protection from looting, destruction, or exploitation. One single premature announcement could incite chaos, with treasure hunters and speculators flooding the area before it could be secured. Thus, silence may sometimes appear the safer avenue compared to disclosure. The internal explanations were perhaps the more disturbing ones. Numerous sources, mostly anonymous, had suggested that officials and scholars with limited access to the chamber considered the discovery to be culturally dangerous. Not in the physical sense, but destabilizing. For them, the bodies, inscriptions, and desecration pointed to facts that may put into question assumptions regarding Cleopatra, Rome, and even the ritual processes in ancient Egypt. If Cleopatra truly imagined her crypt as one where her birth into the realm of gods were performed by mass ritual deaths, her myth breathes something far darker and far more convoluted than that of the tragic queen who ended her life with an asp. Dr. Kathleen Martinez has held on to her carefulness and ensured she neither confirmed nor denied exactly what was discovered. The silence only adds to how it feels very secretive. Was she ordered not to speak? Was the chamber's content too sensitive to reveal? Or was the truth just too strange, too unsettling for the world to accept yet? Such questions are a lingering thrum of silence, like the echo of footsteps in the tunnel. If the tomb was found, why wasn't the discovery declared to the world? Maybe Cleopatra preferred it that way. Maybe the world wasn't meant to know. But one thing is clear. Every silence surrounding the tomb makes the mystery roar louder. And their search, no matter how much it contains them, is far from over. And that's the end of today's deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries. What do you think? Will Cleopatra's tomb finally be revealed in our lifetime? Or will it remain hidden forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories like this, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And when you're ready, click on the next video on your screen. We've got another incredible discovery waiting for you there.